Right. AP World History students, another nugget of history knowledge for you. Still talking about technology. We're going to the year 1700 to, or 1750 to 1900. And the key thing that we're talking about here is something called the Industrial Revolution. Okay. Now, a lot of you have heard of this before, and we talked about it in our content exams, and you'll be able to define it. But I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of what caused it, um, and just give a brief overview of some of the key technologies and a few things like that. Okay, some important things that you need to know. First off, this is the invention or the injection essentially of machines into manufacturing processes. All right. And one of the key things that happens here is before this, it was animal and human muscle doing most of the work. Okay. Any kind of work being done in this world was done by animal muscle or human muscle. And that is going to be replaced by first steam energy and then fossil fuels. So just the energy that is driving the world forward is going to no longer be like primarily animal and humans. So like animals, I mean like horses and oxen and cows pulling things and pushing things. It's going to be done by machines. Okay. The first, the first big technology to power machines like this was the steam engine. Okay, that's the biggest thing. Okay, we have a little factory, steam engine powered factory there. And I put that right next to Great Britain. Okay, and this is the craziest thing, and that's why I use the world map here because the Industrial Revolution is going to change the world, but it really starts in England and in Great Britain here in this little part of the whole world. It's going to spread from there. It's kind of like, why? Why did it start there? Is it because the people inside this little circle were better? No. They came up with some ideas that were pretty awesome. However, they also had some geographical and environmental things that really helped them. And so uh, you do want to know, you definitely want to know that the British were the first to industrialize. Okay, why? One of the main reasons they had large coal deposits. Okay, so coal is used as fuel. All right, and then they also have locations close to waterways across the country. So there's just lots of rivers, streams, and they built and are building canals that are going to link all of this area here on this island. This actually is not that big of a place. And those rivers were able to like transport goods. They were able to be used at first to like power some of the factory machinery. And then water is also just like a big part of like industry and being able to have factories and things like that. And so the location along waterways and the large coal deposits are some of the reasons why the Industrial Revolution really centers and starts in Great Britain. Okay. So those are some key things that you need to know about the start of the Industrial Revolution. After the Industrial Revolution goes, we got factories popping up like all over the place. So we have a little bit. I'm gonna make a little smoke thing that's in France. A lot of smoke. We gotta make a little smokestack, I guess. France, Germany. And then we got the east coast of, at this point, it's going to be the United States, and then also the Midwest. Okay, my hometown, Chicago's got a lot of industrialization going on there too. As the industrialization is happening, um, they're just able, people are able to like build and create things way faster than ever before. And because of that, resources were needed to kind of fuel that industry. All right. So I'm going to put another point here. Resources needed to fuel industry. So that could be wood, timber resources. That's a big one, actually, especially in the Midwest. Um, Eventually, it's going to be rubber. Rubber is going to be something that generally is only grown in tropical areas, and that is going to be taken from those tropical areas and shipped to these centers of industry in other parts of the world. And so, and then eventually after that, there'll be oil as well that is taken, which is a resource used to fuel this industry. And so, a lot of these places where the resources were available are in other parts of the world from where the industrial centers are. So, we're looking at places like South America, especially in Brazil, West Africa. Egypt has a significant amount of resources, especially cotton, and then India as well, and then also in Southeast Asia. Okay, that's a little covered by my notes here, but so these areas here, America and then Western Europe, they're going to be seeking resources across the world in order to fuel their industry. How do they get that? Okay, there's two ways that they end up getting these resources. They use two things: the steam engine and the railroad are used to get resources. All right, so just to make sure we have some visualization here, we got railroads. Let's see here. Put that because the railroad really did go east to west there. We got railroads going on in South America. We definitely had railroads going on in Africa. And then eventually there'll be railroads going on in India as well. And so Europeans oftentimes funded the construction of these railroads in other parts of the world, and then they were used to help more quickly extract resources from these areas. Okay, that oftentimes had negative effects on the people there. Okay, now one of the other things that happens because of the steam engine is powers the ships going across the ocean, and then railroads are moving things around. They're moving things around, all right. But these inventions also facilitate the migration of people. Okay, during this time, there's a huge waves of migration. A lot of migration coming from Europe to North America. There's also significant migration going from China to the west coast of North America, India going to South Africa, China and India also going into Southeast Asia. And so you're just seeing like a lot more people moving around because it's easier to move around because they have these new machines that are making it quicker and easier for them to do that. Okay. Last thing I'm going to talk about here when we're mentioning the Industrial Revolution, we're going to move this out of the way, and we're going to talk about Japan. And specifically in 1868 is the start of something called the Meiji Restoration. All right. You'll notice you have these regions here where like the Europeans and the Americans wanted stuff, and they often were kind of getting their hands in here and getting involved in governments and sometimes colonizing the places. Even if they didn't colonize the places, a lot of times they had some economic control over those areas. And Japan really took a pretty hard, like, isolationist stance, meaning they're trying to be isolated or not be a part of all this and kind of stay away from the Western influences. But eventually, um, the Americans especially started kind of pushing up against Japan and wanting to be involved in their economy. And Japan really looked at what was happening in Europe and America, and they were like, man, these guys are industrializing, and we need to do this too. Otherwise, we're going to get left behind and we're going to end up getting colonized like some of these other places. Um, and so the Meiji Restoration is the Japanese uh, effort to industrialize, to catch up with Western nations. Okay. And honestly, it was pretty effective. Uh, they did, like, their economy boomed. They became very industrialized. Now, what's going to happen because of that is, Japan's an island nation, like very similar to Great Britain, in terms of like, um, you know, the geographic kind of constraints. They don't have a lot of land there, relatively speaking, especially when you look at a place like America that has tons of land. And so they're going to go out searching for resources too, just like the British and the Americans did previously. And so that search for resources is going to kind of cause them to invade and look for resources in some existing countries here, like China and then parts of Southeast Asia. And then that expansion of Japanese interests and territories is going to go this way too. And that is going to end up pushing up against some American interests later on in the 1900s. And that will ultimately start leading to what we call World War II, where you have Japan and America fighting over islands here in the Pacific Ocean. And so when we talk about World War II, which is not for a long time, really the start of that, it comes from the Industrial Revolution and the search for resources. And Japan wanting resources, and oftentimes like they were coming up against places that America had interests in or were actually American territories, and causes a battle here. So kind of interesting how that all sort of one thing leads to the next. So industrial revolutions, the steam engine and the railroad really help not just like develop the economy, but push the world forward in terms of migration ability and linking up the entire globe.